So we started to analyze the spiritual meaning of Korach's claim against Moshe, and the words of the Alter Rebbe. Korach wanted Gevura to be the main thing. Gevura is more important than Chesed. Hashem made the tzimtzum, the concealment of godliness, for the sake of revelation. And Korach saw how the concealment precedes the revelation. It's higher than the revelation. So Korach says concealment is better than revelation. And the truth is that concealment has a higher source than revelation. And concealment, Hashem's ability to hide His light, in a way brings out, in a way, is a deeper and higher strength, so to speak. But the mistake of Korach was that this virtue that concealment has will only be revealed after Bias Mashiach. Now this virtue it's not a virtue now. It's kind of like in today's Yom Yom, the Alter Rebbe tells someone in the private audience that the physical and the spiritual are completely opposite in their very essence, and that whatever is considered a virtue in the physical is considered a deficiency in the spiritual. So in the physical, we say the greatest virtue is to be happy with your lot. In the spiritual, the greatest efficiency is to be happy with your lot. If you're happy with your lot, then you end up falling. So similarly, yes, Gevura has a higher source, etc. That's true, but it's Ventzich Meret. Before the coming of Mashiach, looking at Gevura just as Gevura, looking at darkness just as darkness, darkness is dark, darkness is cold, darkness leaves you outside. So it's not a virtue. On the contrary, the whole purpose of the tzimtzum, purpose of the concealment of godliness is for the sake of revelation. And that's not only the sake of the revelation that comes after the concealment, meaning the creation of the world, but also the goal of the tzimtzum is eventually that there should be revelation of of the source of the tzimtzum. In other words, not only is the purpose of tzimtzum that there should be revelation after tzimtzum, there should be revelation of the divine source of tzimtzum, of the greatness of tzimtzum. But that's only when that's possible. When tzimtzum has become, when the Jewish people, to Torah mitzvahs, they are able to reveal the divine source of darkness. But before you reveal the divine source of darkness, darkness is just dark. That's what we learned yesterday. Now, let's try to go in the Maamar. The Rebbe explains in detail how this is connected with the specific things that Korach said. And number one, Korach said that a talus which is completely dyed with tchelas should not need the strings of tzitzis, not need the strings of tchelas. What is a talus and what are strings? And why should a talus, and what does it mean, what does tchelas mean? So a talus, just like on ourselves, a talus is something that we wrap around ourselves. So a talus represents a infinite, transcendent light of Hashem. It's something you wrap around yourself. It's not something which you internalize. It's something which is transcendent. So the idea of strings coming out of the talus means that there's a contraction in the transcendent light of the talus. Morning, there's a contraction. There's a contraction in the divine light, the Ur Makif, this transcendent light, and it's brought down through the tzitzis. The tzitzis are actually chesed. They're actually they're through a contraction. There is revelation that we can receive. The tzitzis are holy. Why the tzitzis holy? Because the tzitzis are a kedusha, are a holiness that has now been. If I remember correctly, I don't have it in front of me, but I don't misquote, but something to the effect of the reason why tzitzis have more kedusha than the talus is because the tzitzis are a lower level. In other words, because the tzitzis are a kedusha that has been contracted in a way that we can connect with, so in our world it's holy. But a talus doesn't have the same level of holiness because the talus represents a higher level of holiness which does not come into a vessel, which does not to come down in the world. And it more like represents the transcendent light instead of being the transcendent light. Versus the strings of the tzitzis, they're able to receive and be the limited revelation of godliness that they are. And therefore they're considered a high level of kedusha. So the strings of the tzitzis are chesed, they're revelation. They come through a tzimtzum, they come through a contraction, but they are revelation. Versus the talus is an infinite light which has not yet been contracted.
It's kind of like the scepter is holy, but the tip of the scepter, that's the contact. That's the holy.
The tip of the scepter is the contact point. Right. Yeah. So you can't really contact the talus. That's too high to contact. So therefore, it's not considered holy. But as holy as the tzitzis, because the tzitzis are a holiness that we can contain, that we can hold on to. So Korach says we have another few analogies of what strings are. Hair is similar to a string because hair is something which gets its nourishment from the mind, from the brain, but it doesn't get its nourishment in a way that it's a similar kind of. It's been severed from the mind dramatically to the extent, from the brain dramatically to the extent that when the hair is cut, there's no pain at all. Why? Because it's completely extraneous, completely external. It does, if you pull the hair, there's pain because it does get its nourishment from there. However, there is a major separation. So hair is associated with a minuscule amount of revelation that comes from something higher. That's why it says that to bring down the kindness of Hashem, the Zohar says you have a beard, because why a beard? The hair of the beard is connected to a contraction of this infinite light of Hashem, a contraction in a way that we could experience it, that we could enjoy it, that we could benefit from it. So the hair, the 13 attributes of mercy are called the 13 hairs of Hashem's beard, so to speak. And our beard is supposed to mirror, so to speak, the beard of Hashem, and thus, when we have a beard, we draw down kindness upon ourselves. The God's racham, God's mercy. So, what's the idea of the beard? The beard is, there's a contraction of godliness, and the contraction itself causes revelation. Where we're talking about something which is so high that we cannot experience, when it's too high for us to experience, we need the contraction to experience it. So the contraction is a virtue. The contraction is something beneficial. The contraction helps revelation. The hair of the beard and the strings, the tzitzis, are revelation that is opposed to contraction. They're chesed. It's positive. It's rachamim. However, if we're talking about a lesser revelation, not such a great revelation, let's say we're talking about a light of Hashem which has already been severely limited. If you're going to now put another contraction upon that first contraction, you're not going to produce kindness. You're going to produce the opposite. You're going to produce klippah, the opposite of holiness. So that's why it says that the Levim had to shave their heads. Why? Because a Levi's soul, Reb Zev is here. A Levi's soul is associated with gvura, with contraction. Parenthetically, that's the reason why Levim sing. The idea of the Levim singing is that they're missing something. They're yearning for something. So Levim are associated with gvura, with concealment. The hair of the Levi then would mean that there's a further concealment, that there's been the light of Hashem has been filtered even more. So, because that would not be a virtue, because that would be concealment upon top of concealment, that's why Levi is in time of the inauguration of the Mishkan, they had to shave all their hair. It says also, that's why it says about a Nazir. A Nazir, on the other hand, his Kedusha is a higher level of Kedusha, and therefore Nazir, it's supposed to have hair. He's supposed to let his hair grow, because his higher level of Kedusha, this infinite light of Hashem that the Nazir brings down through his Nazirus, needs a contraction upon that as a positive thing, because that contraction upon this infinite light actually makes it palatable so we can receive it. Versus, if we're talking about a light of Hashem which is already contracted, so then another contraction it means that there's darkness. So, strings of a talus in general are about chesed, about kindness. What is kindness? It's kindness because it draws down this infinite light the way that we can experience it. And similarly, and especially, the strings of tchelas. Tchelas in general is associated with gvura. It's interesting how Chassidus says tchelas is associated with gvura. The Erachayim, who is not exactly pure nigla, he also brings a lot of Kabbalah, for sure, in his explanation. I think he says something like, the reason why Hashem wants us to bring the blood of the chalazin fish to be used for the tchelas is because tchelas is considered, the white strings of the tzitzis, says that Erachayim are chesed, and the tchelas is considered rachamim of Hashem. And he says that, and the idea of it coming from the ocean is the ocean represents Torah, and Torah is a source of our racham. Torah is a source of the mercy of Hashem. More Torah, more bracha, more racham. So he says the strings that tzitzis are chesed, and the tchelis is rachamim, which is very interesting, because the way that the Chassidus describes tchelis is, I wish I could say the way Chassidus describes it, as if I know the whole Chassidus. The way that we're learning now, that what tchelis is about, tchelis is gvura. Tchelis is not about revelation. Tchelis is about concealment. And therefore, Korach, who is pro who is seeing in concealment this divine source, like, oh, great, tchelis, let's have more of that stuff. Okay, but Korach is against a string of tchelis. Why is he against a string of tchelis? Because what is a string of tchelis? What does a string of tchelis mean? The language Rabbi uses over here is that a string of tcheles is hachesed b'kli agvura, which is very similar to, it sounds to me, very similar to the way we're explaining the strings of the tzitzis in general. But what's hachesed b'kli agvura mean? The person is defined. Hachesed b'kli agvura means that we're talking about something which its inner meaning, its light, its energy, is revelation, but the method that we're using to connect to this revelation is gvura, is concealment. Unlike talking about discipline, where we also talk about a fusion of chesed and gvura, that a father disciplines his child because he loves his child, so he's motivated by a chesed, but he's doing something of gvura. That's just a fusion of chesed and gvura in general. Here, the language Rabbi uses is the light of kindness in the vessel of gvura. We're talking specifically about revelation. So chesed means that the inner meaning of what's going on is revelation. But in order to receive this revelation, there has to be gvura, there has to be concealment. So we're calling this chesed b'kli gvura, the light of kindness in the vessel of gvura, because the goal of the contraction is for revelation. Since we're talking about a higher kind of revelation, so therefore there has to be, I guess, more gvura to receive it. So it's not really just revelation like the strings of like the white strings of the talus. It sounds like to me that we're talking about a higher kind of revelation, as it seems also from later from the Maamar, and it could be on way off. But the Rebbe says later on the Maamar that the reason we don't have tchelis nowadays is because we're not able to draw down this higher level of holiness. That's why we don't have it nowadays. It's interesting. Like you think the reason we don't have it nowadays is because we can't find that fish. There's a reason we can't find the fish. The reason we can't find the fish is because we're not able to receive the higher level of kedusha which is associated with tchelos. I have a friend whose father was an audience of the Rebbe, he started to wear tchelos. A lot of people they dye their tzitzis because they claim they have found the correct dye for tchelos, although that's not the way we rule. Interesting what the Rebbe told them. The Rebbe said to him they should go to a Rav I think he was asked if he wants to stop. I'm not sure exactly what his question was, but the Rebbe said to him to do that he has to first annul his vow. And the Rebbe called the vow a minhag tov, a good custom, which is interesting. Even though it may not be the halachically correct, but from his perspective, he wanted to do something really nice, so it's called a minhag tov. It's a good custom. He's doing it in honor of Hashem, and requires hatar sadarim, requires him to annul the vow. Anyways, so there are some different subjects. So bottom line, since the tchelas is a higher kind of revelation, and the world cannot handle it now, therefore there's no need to have a tchelas because we can't get that anyways. But the light of Hashem, which is filtered through the white strings of the tzitzis, that we could get. Okay, so that's so tchelas is a higher revelation, not just a revelation like the white strings. It's a higher kind of revelation, also through its symptom, also through contraction.
You find my parable. You can't catch the sky, okay? But lightning, you can catch lightning. So lightning is the ultimate point of all the power of the sky coming down.
Uh-huh.
Ready for lightning today. Maybe those days were, I don't know, bouncing things.
Waiting for Revelation of Mashiach. That's the. You remind me of that guy who met this little child who said, "Where's your yarmulke?" He says, "The sky is my yarmulke." So the child says, such a big sky, such a big yarmulke for such a small head that doesn't fit. And anyway, so now we explain why Korach was against the string of the tchelas, because he was against revelation. He wanted that only there should be concealment, because concealment is a higher source, and he's okay with, I think, that's why he's okay with the talus, because talus is not about the way things are filtered and revealed, the way they remain transcendent, the way they remain infinite. He's okay with the things which are infinite in their source. That's how I understand what he's saying. He's okay with a talus which is tchelas. He's okay with things being in their source. He sees the source of tzimtzum. He likes the way things are in their source. Tchelas, gvura, great. But not the string of tchelas, not the revelation. Okay. This explains also why Korach was against Moshe Rabbeinu and against Aaron. If Korach is all about gvura, concealment, so why is he against Moshe? Moshe was a king of the Jewish people. A king rules he with gvura. He has to rule with. He has a dominion over the people through gvura. So if Korach is all about gvura, wouldn't he find a kindred spirit in the monarchy of Moshe Rabbeinu? Wouldn't he say, this is the way I like things to be. I like things to be in a way of gvura. This is gvura. But he didn't like the gvura of Moshe Rabbeinu. Why not? In this same Farbrengen that we're learning, the Rebbe addressed these same subjects from more of a pshat level. And the Rebbe explained that the 250 people that were opposing Moshe Rabbeinu with Korach, they had something. They didn't have exactly the same thing in mind that Korach did. These 250 people that joined Korach, they also were leaders of the Jewish people. They believed in there being a hierarchy, and their issue was, or what was unique with Korach's claim against Moshe Rabbeinu, it would seem that Korach is attacking himself by attacking hierarchy, because he is also a Levi, he's also lifted above the people. What Korach's problem was, and when the 250 people also joined him, their problem was that in Kedusha there shouldn't be hierarchy. There could be hierarchy in general, but there shouldn't be hierarchy in holiness. We're all holy. They're okay. They knew, these leaders, the people, they knew that there has to be leaders, there has to be an order. It can't be that there's an irbuvia, that everyone's just like fighting for things. They knew to divide the land of Israel, there has to be someone who calls the shots, and they were okay with hierarchy. They were against hierarchy within holiness. They said we're all holy. We all have kedusha. We don't need to have someone who is head and shoulders above us in kedusha itself. They said in regarding kedusha itself, there shouldn't be hierarchy. So Aaron, who's kodesh kadashim, that's a problem. Aaron is holy of holies, that's a problem. Moshe Rabbeinu, whose monarchy is associated with his kedusha, he's not just a king. He's a king whose role as a king is to give us something otherworldly in holiness. He's supposed to be a king who is transparent to the divine light in him and give us from this other higher kind of kedusha. Elsewhere, Chassidus says that the reason why Mashiach is called a king is because Mashiach will give us not just things we can understand in our minds or we can see with our eyes, but Mashiach will also reveal to us things which are far above us, analogous to looking up at a king and being subservient to him. So the Mashiach will reveal to us things which are far beyond any vessel that we're able to receive. Mashiach will give us something which is a higher, different kind of kedusha. So a kedusha which is so high that it's analogous to the way a king is lifted above the people. That's the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu being anointed with the oil of Hashem to be a king. It wasn't about him just ruling the people. It was about being a Korach would be okay with a king who wasn't so holy. Korach's problem was, why do we need to have your higher level of kedusha? Why? What was the problem? As we learned earlier this week, the role of Moshe Rabbeinu is to reveal Hashem to the world. It's about revelation. It's about Moshe Rabbeinu bringing chesed, bringing revelation. Yes, it's a higher kind of revelation, fine, but it's still revelation that's going to reach the world. And Korach is all about gvura. Korach is all about how the concealment itself has a higher source. And therefore Korach is not just against Aaron, who is chesed. Korach is also against Moshe, who is gvura, because the kind of gvura that Moshe Rabbeinu has is associated with major revelation.
So what was the difference between the 250 and Korach in terms of their problems with Moshe and Aaron? It sounds like it was identical.
The words Rabbi uses in the Farang later, I think it's early before this Maamar, is that the main person who was having the taina was Korach, and they were just coming along with him. The Korach seduced everyone to join him, but I think that it's the way we're learning now. It sounds like it's exactly the same. That they understand hierarchy. Korach also understands hierarchy, but he doesn't like there to be hierarchy in holiness itself. There shouldn't be hierarchy in kedusha. The reason I made the distinction was because Rashi says about Korach, why did Korach want to fight against Moshe? Why doesn't he ask about 250 people? Das and Aviram, they had nothing to gain, because Das and Aviram, who were not from the tribe of Levi, they had nothing to lose. But Korach had a lot to lose because he was exalted as a Levi. But the claim is the same. The claim is they get the idea of leadership. The problem is why is there idea of separation and holiness?
So they resented the entire concept of nevuah, or they thought they had it also, or they disregarded it completely.
What?
Right, so
He asked the question. I just want to address this question. You have the answer to the question?
I maybe.
Go ahead, tell me.
I mean, let me ask the question. When Mashiach comes, does that mean that we will all of us have an equality of revelation?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the desired goal.
Right.
Okay. And at this point, Moses was the person standing in front of that desired goal. Only he had it.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, did you say at one point or another, Korach will be right in the time to come or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when Mashiach comes and everybody has that high level, Korach's right. There should be no differentiation between Moshe and the common person. But there is.
There is a
But
difference.
at that time there isn't. I mean, at that time we just sinned, so.
I want to say I'm not sure this is the same idea or not, but the way I understand the claim of Kerach is like we went earlier this week, is that Kerach said the main thing is mitzvahs, physical mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it physical mitzvahs the main thing? So if we connect this Farbrengen and the one we went earlier this week, mitzvahs are physical and they have a higher divine source, and so Kerach is about the physical mitzvahs. Having someone who is revelation of Hashem, he says that's not the goal. The goal is the world should be home for Hashem. There should be, the physical world should be holy. So someone who is about revelation, higher revelation, or the worldly revelation, as great a revelation may be, it's not the goal. The goal is the world should be a place for Hashem. So that's Kerach was a very big chassid, Dir Tachtenim, a home for Hashem in the lower world. So mitzvah is the main thing.
Did Korach want to shepherd the oxen, or did he want to light the menorah? The total, why can't I have the highest mitzvah?
Korach saying we don't need Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't need someone who is revealing Hashem. He is revealing Hashem, yeah. But Korach is saying we don't need revelation. We want concealment. So yeah, there is nevuah. According to Korach, nevuah is not a good thing. Nevuah and there being someone who is that's just a distraction. That's a distraction.
How did he convince the 250 leaders? I mean, we're not talking about Josh Mose. He got 250 leaders to go along with him. How did he convince them that?
No?
Okay, he had jealousy, we understand that. Jealousy was his drive, his motivation, okay?
And they were not Levin, or they all were Levin?
What about those guys? We're not talking about Josh Mose. No?
Yeah.
And were they Levin, or were they just everybody?
Not Levin.
Also,
Okay, so
they were Levin, they say they were jealous.
They had nothing to lose because they weren't everything to gain. But Korach, okay. Bottom line, let's conclude. Conclusion is that the argument of Korach against Moshe Rabbeinu was there shouldn't be someone who represents holiness, represents revelation, because the goal is concealment. The goal is that there's a higher divine source in concealment, and therefore Korach's against the strings of the tchelas. He's okay with the strings, the white strings, which are not so significant, not so special. He's against the extra revelation of the strings of the tchelas. He's against the extra revelation of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's okay with mitzvahs, but he's against this focus on light of Hashem. Why should it be light of Hashem? The goal is the world should be a home for Hashem. Why are you focusing on the light? He felt that's a distraction. And the truth is that the Eibusher doesn't just want a home in the physical world. He wants a luminous home. And therefore he gives us a Moshe Rabbeinu. He gives us someone who stands between us and Hashem to show us the light of Hashem. He gives us miracles. It sounds very similar to a test in chapter 5 of Shayichav Emunah, that Hashem wanted to create the world with Gvura, but he saw the world couldn't handle it, so he gave us also Rachman. What's Rachman mean? Rachman means that there should be tzaddikim, there should be miracles to real Hashem. Korach is like, Gvura is higher, which is connected to the one way of the world could have been created. Yeah, Gvura is great. It makes the world a home at the lowest realm. Korach is all about, let it be even lower. But the goal is Hashem doesn't just want it to be lower. We couldn't survive if it was totally low. We need to have tzaddikim because Hashem wants to have a luminous world. That's why you have to have miracles as well. All right, to be continued. Tzachar Rabba.